Hi everybody, it's Annie. I wanted to talk about some of the practices that I've used to transform habits and beliefs that haven't been very helpful for me. Like myself, if you have self-talk that's very critical or habits like judging others, that I've found that there are practices that really can work well to transform these things. And I've learned lots of practices from Buddhist teachers and retreats I've been on, and from a trauma-informed clinical practice training that I've done. So spiritual practices and psychotherapy practices, they all really boil down to the same 5 or 6 things. And I'd like to share those with you here if you have some habits or thought patterns that you'd like to transform. So pretty much they all start out with the first thing being mindful and noticing that we have these habits. So noticing that you're thinking something unhelpful is the first step, or noticing that you're having the impulse to do something unhelpful. So as soon as we notice that we have that thought or that belief coming up, then we can just say hello to it. So the first step is to notice it. And the second step is to say hello to it, which means that we're disidentifying from it. So instead of thinking, I'm anger, then we can notice, oh, there's anger in me. There's something in me that's angry. So that's the second step, is to really notice, oh, there's something in me that's causing me to suffer right now, that's causing me difficulty, or that's going to make someone else suffer in a minute. So we notice, and then we can turn toward it and say hello to it. And by saying hello to it, right away we're not it anymore. We're not merged with it. We become something bigger that can hold it. So we become sort of a larger self, or you can think of it as your Buddha nature. So we become the one that can hold all of what's happening. So that's the second step. The third step is that we turn toward this reactivity, or this part of ourselves, with compassion. So instead of being upset that this thing has come up or that we're having the same habit again, we can turn toward it and we can say, oh, hello, I know you're there, and you have a kind of compassion for it. Recognizing that it's not trying to hurt us, that it is a wounded part of ourselves. And because of that, it may cause us to suffer or other people to suffer, but it's not trying to hurt us. In fact, it's there for a really good reason. It's there because it was trying to help us at some point. This habit or this way of thinking really helped us survive our childhood or some aspect of our childhood. It's a wounded part of ourselves, and really reacting to it with anger is not going to be helpful. When we react to something, a part of ourselves, with anger or with trying to push it away, resistance, then actually that's another part of ourselves coming up. So when we're in this space of this larger presence that can hold it, we don't try to push it away. We just say hello, we have compassion for it, and we try to understand it, really. So that's the third step, is that we try to really understand it with compassion. And we might want to find out, like, why are you thinking this right now? What are you wanting for me right now? Or what are you worried will happen to me right now if I don't do this? So in the case of judging another person, maybe there's something in me that really wants to feel better about myself. And it believes that if I judge another person as being bad or wrong, then I will feel better about myself. And that's something I really needed to feel at some point in my life. So I can see, okay, so this is what it's wanting. It's wanting me to feel good about myself. And it doesn't know a better way. So we start to understand it, and in some practices this is called investigate. But once we start to understand it in this third step, then we kind of can move into this fourth step, which is empathy, which is when we can really understand, oh, it makes sense why this part of me is doing this or causing me to act in this way, this possibly harmful way, because it thinks that's the only way it can do it. So we can really develop empathy. No wonder you're doing this. No wonder this habit is here. Or no wonder I think like this. It starts to make sense. Okay, that makes sense. Even though in this moment, this habit or this thought may not be the best thing for us, we can understand that it makes sense. Oh, it makes sense why this is happening, why you're behaving this way. So we started with awareness, mindfulness. Then we disidentified by saying hello to it, turning toward it, seeing that it's not all of us. We don't have to merge with it. Then we bring compassion to it and we wonder about it. Okay, so wonder why it's doing this. And then that generates this empathy in us, this empathy for like, no wonder this part of me is acting this way. So then the fifth step, once we have that empathy, then we can really just be with that. Like, okay, so you had to think like this because if you didn't judge other people, then you were going to be judged harshly. Oh, my dear, that must have been really hard. And really feel that compassion for this wounded part of ourselves and what it had to go through. And feeling it in our bodies, really feeling that, oh gosh, that's hard. Poor you. And then maybe tears come up and maybe not. And just seeing like what it feels like to really, really be with this part suffering. And understanding why it had to behave the way it did. That's the fifth step. And then that's pretty much the end, because when we get to that moment of seeing, oh, no wonder, and it makes so much sense, oh, my dear, I really feel you, then transformation happens. So often when we reach that moment of deep understanding of this part of ourselves and why it's behaving this way, but also feeling what it felt like, wow, that was hard to have to be that way, to have to struggle in that way. Transformation will automatically happen. And we won't be beholden to this part in the same way that we were before. I add one additional step that I really like to do that helps me to solidify this in my life is that I will either draw these parts, draw a picture of what it looks like, or I will write about it in my journal, or even more recently I've tried modeling this part of me out of clay, so what it looks like in my mind. If there's an image of it, I can draw it or make a model of it. So sometimes these parts in our mind, they might look like a person or an animal or something inanimate like a rock or a wall or something, tree, could be anything. So, but it helps us to put it outside of ourselves in that way even more strongly. So that's why I do this last bit of some kind of a creative way of making an image for this part. So that's the practice that I use. Step 1, mindfulness or awareness of what's happening. 2 is I disidentify with it by turning toward it and saying hello to this part of me that is having this kind of reaction or this habit. Then the third thing is I have compassion for it and I see that it's wounded. It's a wounded part and I find out what is it worried about or what is it wanting from me. And then I have empathy for it. If I can, I recognize, oh, that makes sense that you're that way. That no wonder anyone would be that way based on what you've gone through. And then I'm with that empathy and I really feel it in my body like, oh, wow, that was hard, and maybe tears come and maybe they don't. And at that point, the transformation is hopefully happening and we feel a little bit different, less stuck, less merged. And then I take the final step of drawing or writing or making an image of this part of what it's like. And that can be anything at all. It doesn't have to look like anything. So thanks for listening. I want to shout out to these different practices that I learned that helped me to create my own practice like this. And it comes originally from Thich Nhat Hanh, who talked about how we take care of our anger or our sadness as a mother would take care of a child. And that's the beginning of this. So having that kind of energy toward the part when it arises. And then Ann Weiser Cornell taught me inner relationship focusing, which is very similar to what I just shared here. And it's this idea, again, of turning towards something, getting to know it, and in that way transforming it. And you can find out more about this practice if you go to focusingresources.com. And then there's the practice called RAIN, R-A-I-N, which insight meditators use, and that you can just Google that and you'll find it. It's similar. Recognize, accept, investigate, and nurture are the steps there. And then the last one that I more recently came upon was Lama Tsultrim Allione, who's a Tibetan Buddhist teacher in the US. And she wrote a book called Feeding Your Demons, which is very similar to this practice as well. And you can look that up online, or her website is terramandala.org. So that's the end of this practice. I hope you enjoyed it. You can read my blogs or find out more about what I'm doing, or subscribe to these videos on my website, rawmindfulness.com. Raw mindfulness, raw like not cooked, mindfulness.com. And please just know that I'm making these videos only because they are helpful to you. They are my practices that I've used to transform my own life over the last 2 decades or so, and I just want to share them with you all so that you can also find them useful. So please comment below how your practice is going, and also maybe if there's something in particular you'd like me to share about, some particular topic, or if there's something in particular in this video that was helpful, please share that below as well. I would really, really love to hear from you. And yeah, if you go to my website, you can get these videos right into your inbox every Friday. I'm also on Instagram, Raw Mindfulness, and Facebook, Raw Mindfulness. So I hope you have a lovely day and try the practice. With love.